to do with how do we firm up loose skin. Loose skin, when we do some homework, is probably one of the biggest issues that people are even afraid to lose weight with, because they don't want to have loose skin. Because, I mean, let's face it, it can take our confidence away. We can look much older than we actually are. We don't feel good about ourselves, and nobody wants to have areas where we feel that we're not as attractive as we could be. So we're gonna talk about some of the causes. There's no way we could get into all of them, but we're gonna talk about some of the causes and some of the solutions, and especially the ones that solutions that take on a broader application and can actually solve some of them. The good news is loose skin can be firmed up, and there are a number of ways to do it. We are going to make a distinction right out of the gate here, that there is a point when the skin is not just loosed or sagging, but it's actually massive folds of skin. Now that becomes a whole separate conversation, and we'll even touch on that at the end of that, what might be able to do that. But most of what we're going to talk about here is how do we firm up loose skin? What would that include? Well, what are the areas where people get loose skin? We get skin hanging under our arms. What if I didn't know there's a name called bat wings? Did you ever hear of that? I didn't know that was the name out there for loose skin. And of course, the belly area can be a problem. And then there's in the thighs, the legs, the buttocks, the neck, the cheeks, the chin. I've got it right here that is starting to tighten up, which is good. Women in particular, and they have some special challenges because the evolution and the changes, the metamorphosis that takes place in a woman's body presents special challenges, because of course the muscle mass of a woman is much less than a man. And just a little side point here, when the muscles are tight and you have, this is one of the solutions we'll talk about, when we tighten muscles, they can pull up loose skin that might be hanging. Now, I'd like to give a shout out to Aubrey, because there's a distinction, and this is where some of the confusion comes in. She has personal trainers, and they have mentioned, we thought that doing sit-ups and so forth and getting more muscle can get rid of fatty belly. That's very different than loose skin. The skin is attached to the muscle, so when we pull the muscle back and we get it right, all back in the right places, that can give the appearance of tighter skin because it pulls it back into position. That's not to be confused with belly fat. That doing 1,000 crunches will remove the belly fat. Exercise in general, of course, does lose belly fat, as we mentioned. But I just wanted to make that distinction for Aubrey. And for any of you who are now going to hear, part of the resolution of sagging skin is exercise and rebuilding the muscle mass, different than belly fat. Okay, point made, moving on. Other challenges that women have. Pregnancy. Pregnancy can have its own challenges for women, is because the stomach, of course, can be stretched. There can be discoloration. There can be stretch marks. The elastin gets moved and the collagen gets maxed out. There are some things we can talk about in a preventative way, and there's some solutions that we'll touch on both in diet and in other applications that can be made. Last challenge for women, of course, we mentioned this in the belly fat talk also, is when a woman hits menopause, then the hormones estrogen changes the positioning of the fat. And so with that can come areas that are now holding fat that didn't. And if the muscles aren't what they quite used to be, then of course that's a challenge. So women in particular, the only one that really men can sympathize with the women on is the massive weight loss. That's where we get it. And what a lot of these researchers are mistakenly saying, now I'm going to take exception with a lot of these books and researchers that I look, they all say it's aging that can cause the amino acids, the collagen, the elastin. The collagen is what keeps everything supple and retains the moisture. The elastin is, as the name implies, elasticity to the skin, the rebound, so that it can come back. So with age, they say that goes down. Now, I'm going to put a little side note, and if you're taking notes, I'm going to get up on my high horse, my little soapbox here again. It isn't as much aging. as much as it is the pollutants in the SAD diet, standard American diet, the Western diet. There is a amino acid called hyaluronic. Hyaluronic. And what that's responsible for, that's an amino acid that supplies and keeps the moisture in the fibers. If you're eating highly processed foods, junk food, or even keto that's not clean, you will clog the mechanisms that allow those amino acids, the hyaluronic. Incidentally, guess where you can find that? Not in a collagen injection, as some say, but in bone broth. Man, we're going to try not to go off on bone broth today because I'm just learning so much, and we appreciate the value of that in further talks we'll talk about. But that is where you can still get the collagen. In fact, 98% the protein that comes in a homemade bone broth, so good for your skin, is 98% of that is the amino acids and the collagen, and within the collagen is the glycine, and within that we have other amino acids, including the hyaluronic acid. So if you want to look younger, eat the bone broth, and then we're going to talk about some other things, because you don't need collagen injections. I'm going to do a whole slideshow or graphic infographic on the difference between collagen per se and bone broth, and the superiority of all the things that come with that, as opposed to getting the pills or any other way for collagen. Because you need collagen for the skin. Why? If you can imagine the horizontal plane, if you can imagine my arm, and if we took a saw and we cut some grooves in it, that would hurt a lot. But it would give you the same vision or the same image that happens to the skin. They collapse. The collagen goes away. They get, the elastin gets clogged. The amino acids are no longer retaining the moisture. So there's all these up and downs. Now, when we look at them, we see scaly, dry skin. But what that is depressions that are no longer filled from the collagen that we are clogging, and that as we age would naturally start to break down unless we have a whole foods diet, which we'll get a little bit into, and we're having things that promote collagen. And there is a process that we're going to talk about that actually helps the mechanism stay clean and work properly. And we'll get into that in just a couple of minutes. So how can we firm up loose skins? Well, we're going to talk about the biological process, and we're going to talk about the other superpower, like we said, the bone broth. But what are some other things that can help in some of these areas? Well, dermatologists say firming creams can help. Now, supplements can be a big help because they can contain some of these amino acids. Exercise, we've already alluded to why that can help. It keeps the skin taut, and it also helps to stimulate the mitochondria, which, as we know, are the burning cells, and they keep those cells clean, or the burning energy that keep the cells clean. We can firm up skin with weight loss if we do it slowly. Now, here's something I hadn't thought of in the research. They even mentioned things such as massage therapy. And then, of course, there's cosmetic procedures. We're trying to stay away from that. But if we're dealing with people with massive weight loss and they did it too quickly, then they now may need, especially if it's getting infected and the folds of skin are retaining bacteria, and it's just not functional in life, they may have to consider an operation. There is ways we can avoid that by the way we lose the weight, but there can be a point, and we'll touch on it again, where the hanging skin or the sagging skin turns into folds of skin, and that can be a little too much. Okay, let's move quickly because there's still a few other things we want to hit on and still not get this over 15 minutes. It's a big subject. You may immediately have thought of autophagy. But those of us that are in this diet and doing fasting, does autophagy help tighten up the skin? Short answer, yes, it does. And we know why. Because it removes the dying cells that can cause the sagging skin. It cleans up the mitochondria so that they are not clogged and that they are keeping the elasticity and the elastin in the skin, the energy, the vibrancy. It can actually make you look decades younger if you periodically get into autophagy. Just briefly, if we unmuted you, how long would it take you to get into autophagy? If anybody, I know we can't talk about the answer, but think about it. How long would it take you? Well, let me give you a quick process and breakdown of what happens metabolically when we start the fasting. Some of you know this. 18 hours, your body begins to switch to a fat burning mode. You begin to switch. 24 hours, your body begins the autophagy process, recycling old cells and new ones. 48 hours, this is really good, and nobody's even talking about this for regenerating your skin. 48 hours, your growth hormone, human growth hormone made within your system and perfect for your levels you need, are 5 times higher than at any other time. Talk about regeneration, rejuvenation, looking younger. Human growth hormones, people pay hundreds of dollars for small amounts of it, and it has many side effects because it's exogenous outside of the body. 54 hours, your insulin has dropped low and your body becomes increasingly insulin sensitive. And by the time you get into 72 hours, if you've done a 3-day fast, your human growth hormone is peaking out, maxing out, and you're even on the border of now encouraging stem cell generation, tapping right into the real expression of your genes. And you may know just briefly that a stem cell is a neutral, generic gene straight from your DNA that can be used anywhere it's needed. It can be modified, adjusted. It can take on the DNA of the individual. The theme of the DNA rejuvenation, or the mitochondria has their own DNA expression. So it can be used anywhere. That's huge. Fasting is huge for helping us regenerate and rejuvenate the skin. And it does help a lot tightening up. Does autophagy help with wrinkles? Yes, we've already described that. So does the high-fat diet with the collagen and the fat that we described, which makes the cholesterol, which is very similar, in fact, in many ways, a form of the collagen. How can we reverse saggy skin? Some of the promotions for some of the research is facelift. I'm not a big fan, but neck lift, laser resurfacing, radio frequency, ultrasound. These are all things that stimulate the collagen underneath the surface of your skin. They may require some treatments and some professional help. You can look that up. I'm just throwing it out there. You can do some research and decide if that's something you're interested in. Let me just finish off with this point, a couple of points from this. Why does loose skin appear after weight loss? One of the biggest ones that we talked about. There's a genetic component that when we lose our skin, and it really comes down to the 2 things we mentioned, a loss or a clogging of the collagen and elastin production. Collagen and elastins are proteins found in the connective tissue. A bad diet will clog all that up. Together, they'll work to keep your skin firm and elastic. Collagen provides the structure and helps keep the skin firm and supple. Elastin is responsible, like we said, as the name implies, for the pullback, the elasticity of the skin. Other reasons for saggy skin, wrinkles. Now, here's a good one. Diet lacking in whole foods. We already mentioned why. We're clogging up the elastin, the proteins. The skin can't function properly. Good idea to have a fast, a cleanse, stimulate the mitochondria, be in a keto diet. Now, here's one, not getting enough vitamins and minerals. That seems like that makes sense because for obvious reasons, we just talked about some of these acids are a byproduct of getting the vitamins and the minerals. Now, here's one I didn't think of, maybe you didn't. Not quitting weightlifting, not stopping. Let me get where this is, where to go. Oh yeah, strength training. Ditching strength training and focusing on only cardio can lead to loose skin. Did you know that? I did not know that. Aubrey knew that. See that? And I see a couple of other heads wagging. So this is because you'll be losing the body mass that is holding that skin tight, which makes sense because we talked about it. Healthy diet, rich in the whole natural, minimally processed foods. And we talked about why, because it has everything necessary to keep that skin elastic. Last thing I want to mention, and before we wrap it up, I got 7 pages here, and I had 25 that I was taking stuff from and 4 different resources. I wanted to read this from the National Library of Medicine regarding fasting, because remember we talked about even the folds of skin. The honest answer is how far can we pull it back with autophagy? There's no research because nobody wants to fast long enough to be part of a study with enough people that make a difference. So here's what the National Library of Medicine says. There's a strong need for evidence-based suggestions and guidance. Literature on the impact of the Ramadan fasting, as well as other kinds of fasting and skin disease, is scarce and of poor quality, as well as the little information available. What I have found as I have gotten into keto and fasting, that many of the things that the mainstream doctors are saying or feel is the established knowledge is not applicable because there are no studies being done with people fasting long enough. Case in point, and I'll stop talking. For the longest time, they thought that once you had type 1 diabetes because your pancreas was now dysfunctional due to a disease as a young person or whatever reason, your beta cells were no longer producing insulin, et cetera, et cetera. They thought that was it, done deal, never, no hope. You just got to live with insulin the rest of your life. In the University of Berkeley in California, in studies that they're doing on white mice, guess what has stimulated the regeneration of even their pancreas? Fasting. Yep, I can see the lip syncing going on. Good. What's my point? If you're feeling a little hopeless and you just don't know, how can you get, there's no cream that's going to get away, you know, the burn marks, the stretch marks, or help pull it back in. As the dermatologists say, it's, you know, minimal effect, but it can help depending on what proteins you may be lacking in, amino acids, and they may be in the cream. You have to do your homework. But if you're at that point and you're just like discouraged and so forth, or I can't get rid of this, or I got this book, I promise you that no one knows how much, if you were to do extended fasting, and when I say that, I mean a minimum of 3 days. If you can go longer, it's okay. Be careful. We're always open for questions. If you did that periodically, even once a month, and you were really working on a problem, I would be shocked if you didn't see some new results. Because when that autophagy can kick in and you can start eating dead things, it's going to, if it attacks a freckle and a skin tag, you can believe it's going to work after burn marks, stretch marks, and other things. Even my liver spots start to go away from abuses. So we don't know. I can't definitively say, but I have seen, my dad's neck was supposed to never be fixed when it was broken. It was hopeless. They told him it was way too long. They told him the infections in his legs could not have been cured unless he went on IVs. And some of you are familiar with Dad's story and how we use diet and keto and a little bit of fasting. We could go on and on of things that we were not supposed to be able to do, that the medical field doesn't have a database to study from. Because who wants to fast like we are? We're crazy, right? Some of us right now, I know my dad's, he's on, what are you starting, Dad? Give me the nod. You're in 5-day fast right now, and you don't even feel like eating, right? I don't even know if I'm on 4 or 3. I don't even, I got to look it up in the book. So, but we're like busting out with energy, feeling good. Hey, Dad, you might even be getting good looking again. That makes me glad that I'm looking like you. Okay, that's enough of this talk, everybody. Thanks for being here. We're going to open it up for conversation, and we'll start recording our support group. Sorry I had to go so quick, but man, is there a lot of information on this. So thanks for you being here.